The first betrayal didn't arrive loudly. It slipped into my life quietly, wearing my sister's voice and my own trust. I had always believed that if the world ever turned against me, my sister, Mara, would stand beside me. We grew up sharing a room, secrets whispered after midnight, promises sealed with pinky fingers. She was older by 3 years, older enough to feel like a second parent, close enough to feel like my safest friend. When our parents died within a year of each other, it was Mara who held my hand at the funeral, who told me, "We're all we have now." I believed her. By the time I turned 28, my life finally felt steady. I had a modest but growing business, a quiet marriage, and a small circle of friends who trusted me. Stability felt earned, fragile, precious. And Mara was woven into every part of it. She helped with my paperwork, managed my accounts when things got busy, and often reminded me how lucky I was to have her. I never questioned it. Why would I? She was my sister. The first crack appeared the day my bank called. There was an unusual calm in the manager's voice as he asked me to come in. No panic, no accusation, just professional distance. When I arrived, he slid a file across the desk and said, "We need clarification on several transfers made under your authorization." The numbers blurred together at first. Large withdrawals. Repeated. Systematic. All signed with my credentials. I laughed. Actually laughed. I told him there must be some mistake. I didn't make those transfers. I barely even checked that account anymore. Mara handled most of it. The manager's eyebrows tightened. "Your sister?" he asked, glancing at the file. "Yes, she's listed as having access." That was the moment the room felt smaller. The air heavier. I called Mara immediately. She didn't answer. I texted. No reply. I told myself she was busy, that this was all a misunderstanding. I spent the next 2 hours sitting in that office, answering questions, signing forms, feeling a cold, unfamiliar fear settle in my stomach. When I finally got home, Mara was there. She sat at my kitchen table, hands folded, eyes red as if she'd been crying. Relief washed over me. I rushed forward, waving the papers. "There's some kind of mistake," I said breathlessly. "The bank thinks." She looked up slowly, and something in her expression stopped me mid-sentence. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't concern. It was calculation. "I was going to tell you," she said quietly. The words hit harder than any accusation could have. I asked her what she meant, my voice shaking now. She sighed, like I was exhausting her, and said, "I needed the money. Just temporarily. You have so much, and I was drowning." Drowning? I stared at her, searching for the sister who once shared her last piece of bread with me. "You took everything," I whispered. "You emptied accounts. You signed contracts in my name." She flinched, but only slightly. "I knew you'd overreact." That sentence shattered something permanent inside me. She didn't apologize.
She didn't beg.
She explained. She justified. She told me I owed her for raising me, for supporting me, for being the stronger one all these years. She spoke as if my life was an extension of hers, as if my success was a resource she had every right to claim. That night, after she left, I sat alone on the kitchen floor, papers scattered around me, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was emotional, intimate, surgical. And as I would soon learn, this was only the beginning.
I didn't sleep that night.
Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Mara's voice, calm, certain, unapologetic, telling me I owed her. By morning, the shock had curdled into something heavier. Dread. Because betrayal from a stranger hurts, but betrayal from a sister rewrites your entire past. I spent the next day making calls. The bank. A lawyer. An accountant. Each conversation peeled back another layer of damage. Loans opened in my name. Guarantees signed without my knowledge. Funds moved not just once, but repeatedly over months. This wasn't desperation. It was planning. When I confronted Mara again, I expected anger or fear. Instead, she arrived armed with tears. She showed up at my door unannounced, eyes swollen, voice trembling. The moment I let her in, she collapsed onto the couch and started crying loudly, dramatically, like someone performing grief. I stood there, stiff and exhausted, unsure whether to scream or leave my own house. "You're going to ruin me," she sobbed. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" I asked her what she meant. She wiped her face and looked at me with disbelief. "Calling lawyers? Talking to the bank? You're acting like I'm some criminal." "You are," I said quietly. The words seemed to offend her more than the accusation itself. Her tears stopped instantly. She sat up straighter, her eyes hardening. "You really think people will believe you?" she asked. That question chilled me. She leaned forward and spoke in a low, deliberate tone. "Everyone knows I'm the responsible one, the stable one. You've always been emotional, impulsive. If this gets out, people will assume you messed up and now you're blaming me." I felt something close to panic. Mara had always been charming, articulate, convincing. She volunteered. She networked. She built relationships carefully. I, on the other hand, preferred privacy. I avoided drama. I trusted too easily. She knew this. That evening, my phone started buzzing. A friend asked if everything was okay. Another mentioned they'd heard I was having money problems. By night, my aunt called, her voice cold, telling me Mara had come to her in tears, claiming I was threatening to destroy her over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Mara had moved faster than I thought possible. She had already framed the story, with herself as the wounded sister and me as the unstable one. When I confronted her about spreading lies, she didn't deny it. She smiled faintly. "I'm protecting myself," she said. "You should do the same instead of playing victim." The irony was suffocating. Days passed and the pressure mounted. The bank froze my accounts pending investigation. My business partners grew distant. One quietly asked if I needed to step back until things settled. At home, my husband tried to be supportive, but I could see doubt creeping into his eyes. Mara had been in our lives for years. She'd earned his trust too. One night, as I lay awake, I realized the most painful truth yet. Mara hadn't just stolen my money. She had stolen my credibility. I started questioning myself. Had I been careless? Naive? Too trusting? She had planted those seeds deliberately, watering them with concern and tears until even I wasn't sure anymore. But beneath the self-doubt, something else began to form. Resolve. I gathered every document, every message, every signature. I stopped calling Mara. I stopped defending myself to people who had already chosen her side. Instead, I listened. I observed. I documented. Because if Mara thought I would crumble quietly, she had underestimated the one thing she never took from me: the truth. And soon, I would learn just how far she was willing to go to bury it. The more silent I became, the louder Mara grew. Within a week, her version of events had spread everywhere I hadn't yet reached. Relatives I barely spoke to suddenly had strong opinions about my recklessness. Old friends sent carefully worded messages asking if I was okay, the kind people send when they're bracing for bad news. I could feel my reputation slipping through my fingers, reshaped by a story I hadn't written. Mara, meanwhile, was thriving. She posted online about toxic family relationships and the pain of being betrayed by someone you love. No names, no details, just enough to gather sympathy. The comments filled quickly with support. People praised her strength. Some even messaged me, urging me to apologize to her for whatever I had done. I wanted to scream. Instead, I kept collecting evidence. Late one night, while sorting through old emails, I found something I'd overlooked: a series of forwarded documents sent from my account months ago, documents I never remembered sending. The forwarding address was unfamiliar at first, until I recognized it. Mara had created a secondary email that mirrored my name closely, just one letter off. Close enough to confuse anyone skimming quickly. Far too deliberate to be accidental. My hands shook as I scrolled. She had been preparing this for a long time. I took the evidence to my lawyer the next morning. He listened carefully, flipping through the pages, his expression tightening with every new detail. When he finally looked up, His voice was calm but firm. "This isn't a misunderstanding," he said. "This is fraud. And identity misuse." Hearing it said aloud made my stomach drop.
Fraud.
Sister or not, these were serious charges. For a brief moment, guilt flickered inside me. The image of the girl who once braided my hair and defended me on playgrounds tried to resurface. Then I remembered her smile when she asked if people would believe me. That night, Mara called for the first time in days. Her voice was softer now, almost tender. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "We're family." I told her I knew about the fake email. The line went silent. When she spoke again, her tone had changed completely. "You went digging," she said. "That was your mistake." She warned me, not directly, but clearly.
She knew things about me, she said.
Private things. Old mistakes. Moments I wasn't proud of. "If you push this," she continued, "those things might surface. And people might not see you the same way." It was a threat. I hung up without responding, my chest tight, my skin cold. Mara had crossed a line I didn't know existed. This wasn't just about money anymore.
It was about control.
The next morning, I discovered she had gone one step further. My business email was flooded with cancellation notices, contracts withdrawn, meetings postponed indefinitely. One client politely informed me they were reevaluating our association due to concerns raised about my integrity. Concerns raised by Mara. She had contacted people directly, implying I was under investigation for financial misconduct. Technically true, but only because of her actions. She had flipped the narrative so thoroughly that I now looked like the criminal trying to escape consequences. For the first time, fear truly set in. I locked my doors. I triple-checked my passwords. I avoided social media completely. My own sister had become someone capable of destroying me piece by piece, and she knew exactly where to strike. Still, amidst the chaos, something unexpected happened. One person didn't believe her. An old colleague called me late that evening. He said Mara had reached out to him too, but her story hadn't added up. The details shifted. The timelines didn't match. "If you have proof," he said carefully, "you should hold on to it. This isn't over." After the call ended, I sat in the dark, the house eerily quiet. For the first time since this began, I didn't feel alone. Mara had underestimated something else. People who lie eventually forget which version they told. And I was ready to let her. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, folded neatly, and sealed with a legal stamp that made my heart race before I even opened it. Mara was suing me. The accusation was carefully worded: harassment, defamation, emotional distress. According to her, I had launched a campaign to ruin her name, threatened her stability, and fabricated allegations out of resentment. The irony was so sharp it felt physical. She had stolen from me, sabotaged my work, poisoned my relationships, and now she was painting herself as the one under attack. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, the letter untouched in my hands. Somewhere deep inside, the last remnants of denial finally died. This wasn't a family conflict spiraling out of control. This was war. My lawyer was unsurprised. "This is a common tactic," he said calmly. "She's trying to intimidate you. Shift the pressure." Still, the emotional weight was crushing. Each legal step forward meant another step away from the sister I once knew. I grieved her quietly, even as I prepared to fight her publicly. Depositions were scheduled. Statements requested. Every detail of my life felt exposed under a harsh light. I had to explain my finances, my decisions, my trust in Mara, over and over again, to strangers who didn't know our history. Each explanation carried a faint undertone of judgment. "Why didn't you notice sooner? Why did you give her access? Why didn't you protect yourself?" Those questions haunted me at night. Mara, on the other hand, leaned fully into her role. She appeared calm and composed in every legal interaction, presenting herself as the concerned, exhausted sister trying to survive an unstable sibling's vendetta. She dressed carefully, spoke softly, and cried at exactly the right moments. Watching her across the conference room felt surreal. Her eyes would meet mine briefly, and in them I saw no remorse, only calculation. The worst blow came from within my own family. My aunt refused to testify, claiming she didn't want to choose sides. A cousin told me privately that Mara had always seemed more reliable. Even my husband, though still beside me, grew quieter, burdened by stress and uncertainty. Trust, once cracked, doesn't break loudly. It erodes. One evening, after another draining meeting, I sat alone in my car and finally cried. Not the sharp, panicked sobs from the beginning, but slow, heavy tears of loss. I wasn't just losing money or stability. I was losing my sense of belonging. But truth has a strange way of demanding patience. As the investigations deepened, inconsistencies began to surface. Bank timestamps that didn't match Mara's claims. IP addresses linked to devices registered in her name. Signatures that forensic analysts flagged as traced, not signed naturally. Small details. Powerful ones. During one deposition, Mara contradicted herself without realizing it. She mentioned receiving a transfer weeks before she had previously claimed to know anything about the accounts. Her lawyer quickly redirected, but the damage was done. It was subtle, but visible to those trained to notice. I clung to those moments. Still, the emotional toll continued. Strangers dissected my character. My past mistakes resurfaced, twisted into proof of instability. I learned how easily vulnerability can be weaponized. And yet, through it all, something inside me hardened, not into bitterness, but into clarity. I stopped trying to convince everyone. I focused on the facts, on the paper trail, on the truth that didn't change no matter how often it was challenged. Mara wanted to exhaust me, to make me give up for the sake of peace.
She didn't understand one thing.
Peace built on lies is just another form of prison. And I had already lost too much to accept that again. The shift didn't happen all at once. It came in fragments, small moments where Mara's control began to loosen, where the version of herself she had carefully constructed started to crack. It began with discovery. A forensic accountant uncovered a pattern no one had noticed before. Several of the transfers Mara claimed were emergency loans had been routed through an intermediate account before reaching her. That account wasn't listed in any of the initial documents because it didn't exist under her legal name. It belonged to a shell company. A shell company she had registered 2 years earlier. When my lawyer showed me the paperwork, I felt a strange mix of vindication and nausea. This wasn't impulsive desperation. This was premeditation. Mara hadn't just taken advantage of access. I had been part of a long-term plan. During the next hearing, the atmosphere changed. Mara arrived late. Her posture was tense. The calm confidence she once wore so easily now felt forced, brittle. When the shell company was mentioned, her lawyer requested a recess almost immediately. I watched her hands shake for the first time. After the break, Mara's testimony grew erratic. She over-explained simple questions and deflected direct ones. When asked why the company existed if she had nothing to hide, she snapped that she was being harassed. The room went quiet. Emotional outbursts no longer read as vulnerability. They read as pressure. Outside the courtroom, whispers started. People who had once supported her began asking cautious questions. Stories she had told no longer aligned. Dates shifted. Details blurred. Sympathy, once abundant, became conditional. And then came the email. An anonymous message landed in my inbox late one night.
No greeting. No explanation.
Just screenshots. They showed Mara messaging a former friend, someone she had fallen out with years ago. In those messages, she openly discussed securing my future using my accounts, bragging about how easy it was because I trusted her completely. She joked about how I would never fight back hard enough. I read the messages over and over, my chest tight, my vision swimming. This was the sister who once swore she'd always protect me. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. When the emails were introduced as evidence, Mara denied them instantly until the metadata was verified. Device match. Location match. Timestamps lining up with transfers already under scrutiny. Her face went pale. For the first time, she looked at me not with superiority, but with fear. That should have felt good. It didn't. What I felt was grief, deep, heavy, unavoidable. Grief for the years I had spent loving someone who saw me as a resource. Grief for the childhood memories now tainted by doubt. Grief for the sister I had defended when no one else did. The court didn't deliver a final judgment that day, but something far more important happened. Mara lost control of the narrative. Family members who had stayed silent began reaching out, quiet apologies, hesitant admissions that things hadn't made sense. Business partners reopened conversations. The fog around my name started to lift. At home, the tension eased slightly. My husband, finally seeing the full picture, apologized for doubting me. We talked late into the night about trust, about boundaries, about how easily love can be exploited when it's unconditional. Mara tried calling me that week. I didn't answer. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. The woman on the other end wasn't my sister anymore. She was someone who had made deliberate choices and now had to live with their consequences. As the case moved toward its conclusion, one truth became impossible to ignore. The betrayal hadn't destroyed me. It had exposed her. And in that exposure, I was finally free. The court's decision didn't come with drama. No raised voices.
No sudden confessions.
Just a measured, formal ruling delivered in a quiet room that smelled faintly of paper and polish. Mara was found liable.
Fraud.
Misrepresentation. Identity misuse. The words landed with a dull finality, heavier than I expected. There was no rush of victory, no sense of triumph. Only a deep, hollow stillness. The judge ordered restitution, asset freezes, and referred parts of the case for further review. Consequences, real and unavoidable, finally attached themselves to the choices Mara had made. She didn't look at me as the ruling was read. When it was over, she stood quickly and left without a word.
No apology.
No last attempt to explain. Just absence. In the weeks that followed, my life moved slowly back toward normal, though normal had changed shape. Accounts were restored piece by piece. Contracts renegotiated. Trust, however, took longer. Every signature, every agreement, every friendly offer now passed through a filter of caution I hadn't needed before. Family gatherings grew smaller. Some relatives distanced themselves entirely, embarrassed by how quickly they had believed Mara. Others reached out, trying to reconnect, careful and subdued. I accepted a few apologies. I declined others. Forgiveness, I learned, doesn't mean access. Mara disappeared from my life completely. No calls. No messages. No attempts at reconciliation. I heard through distant connections that she was selling possessions, downsizing, starting over somewhere else. The idea of her alone, rebuilding from scratch, stirred conflicting emotions, pity tangled with resentment, sadness mixed with relief. I didn't miss her the way I thought I would. What I missed was the illusion of having a sister I could trust without hesitation. That loss lingered quietly, surfacing in unexpected moments, when I reached for my phone to share news, or when I remembered a joke only she would have understood. My husband and I went to counseling together, not because our marriage was broken, but because it had been tested in ways neither of us anticipated. We learned how fear can masquerade as doubt, how silence can wound as deeply as accusation. Slowly, carefully, we rebuilt not just trust in each other, but trust in our shared judgment. One afternoon, while organizing old boxes, I found a photo of Mara and me as teenagers, arms around each other, smiling without restraint. I stared at it for a long time, searching for signs of what she would become. There were none. I put the photo away, not destroyed, not displayed. Some memories don't deserve either honor. What surprised me most was the peace that followed. Without Mara's constant presence, my life felt quieter, steadier. Decisions became simpler, boundaries clearer. I learned to ask for help without surrendering control, to love without blind loyalty. The betrayal had stripped me down to essentials. Who I was without her approval, what I was willing to tolerate, where my responsibility ended and someone else's began. Late one evening, as I locked up my office, I realized something important. I had stopped looking over my shoulder. The fear that once followed me everywhere had loosened its grip. In its place was a cautious confidence, not naive, not hardened, but grounded. Mara had taken a lot from me, but she had also forced me to reclaim myself. And as the silence settled fully around my life, I understood that it wasn't emptiness I was feeling. It was space.
Space to breathe. Space to grow.
Space she would never occupy again. Time did what justice could not. It softened the sharpest edges. Months passed.
Seasons changed.
The story that once consumed every waking thought slowly loosened its grip on my days. People stopped asking questions. My name stopped being spoken in hushed tones. The scandal faded into something quieter, something finished. I didn't follow Mara's life anymore. At first, that distance felt intentional, even defiant. Later, it became natural. When someone mentioned her in passing, I noticed my chest no longer tightened. Her name had lost its power over me, and that realization felt like the final release. I rebuilt carefully. Not just my business or finances, but my sense of self. I learned to say no without guilt. To pause before trusting. To listen to discomfort instead of explaining it away. Boundaries became less like walls and more like doors, open only to those who respected them. There were moments of anger still. Quiet ones. The kind that surface unexpectedly when you remember how deeply you were deceived. I allowed those moments to exist without shame. Healing, I learned, is not about erasing pain. It's about no longer letting it decide your future. One evening, I was invited to speak at a small professional gathering about resilience and ethics. I almost declined. For a long time, I had avoided anything that put my story near a spotlight. But something told me it was time. I didn't talk about Mara by name. I talked about trust. About how betrayal rarely looks like cruelty at first. It looks like familiarity, comfort, shared history. I talked about how easily love can blind us, and how strength isn't proven by endurance alone, but by the courage to stop enabling harm. Afterward, a woman approached me quietly. She said she was in the middle of something similar, struggling to accept that the person hurting her was someone she loved. She thanked me, not for surviving, but for walking away. That mattered more than any ruling. At home, life had found a steady rhythm again. My marriage felt grounded, honest. We laughed more. We planned without fear of sudden collapse. Trust, rebuilt slowly, proved stronger for having been tested. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the question people had asked me most throughout it all. Do you think you'll ever forgive her? The answer surprised even me. Forgiveness, I realized, was never the goal. Understanding was. I understood now that Mara's betrayal was not caused by my trust, but by her choices. That my kindness was not a flaw. That loving deeply does not make someone weak. It only reveals who is willing to abuse that love. I didn't need reconciliation to move forward. I didn't need closure from her. The truth had already closed that chapter. On the anniversary of the day everything began, I went for a long walk alone. I passed familiar streets, old memories flickering in and out of focus. When I returned home, I felt lighter, not because the past was gone, but because it no longer defined me. Some betrayals destroy you. Others reveal you. They strip away illusions, false loyalties, inherited obligations. They force you to choose yourself, not selfishly, but honestly. My sister betrayed me. But what survived that betrayal was stronger than anything she tried to take. My voice, my clarity, my future. And that was something no one could ever steal again.